Good morning again, everybody. Just to welcome those of you who are joining us. We've got over 700 people joining us on this Saturday morning. So, again, always amazed by the enthusiasm and engagement from teachers across Romania. And also a massive thank you to Helbling English and to Fisher for putting on this fabulous series of sessions for us. We're going to get started with our second session from Chris Jory. Chris is a great experienced teacher trainer, and author from the ELT world with over 3 decades of experience that he's bringing to us. He's written on options from Helbling, and after several decades in Cambridge and Oxford in the UK, has opted for warmer climes and is now based in Italy. Chris is going to be speaking to us about the beauty of small steps. So I'm going to hand over to Chris to talk about what that really means and how you can bring those into your classroom. Thank you, Chris. Over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Charlie. And yeah, greetings from sunny Italy. I hope it's sunny where you all are as well. And my session for the next 50 minutes or so is, as you can see there, called The Beauty of Small Steps. And really, it's all about practical ideas for developing your student skills competencies. You've probably seen the abstract for the session. I'm not going to read this out, obviously, but just to give you a quick recap of what we'll be looking at, essentially exploring the importance of micro skills strategies in helping your students to develop their skills competencies. We'll be looking at both bottom up and top down skills, and we'll be looking at a range of practical ideas that I believe would lead to supporting sustained and incremental, little by little, step by step skills development for teenage learners, and looking particularly at lower secondary here. So just moving on, I'd like to begin by just getting you to think a little bit about what you think your own students' beliefs are about language skills and language skills development. And I'm going to show you 6 statements. And what I'd like you to do for each statement is just think about what your students would think about these things. And would your students agree or disagree with each statement? Okay, so from your students' perspective, would they agree or disagree with each of these 6 statements? And can you write in the chat, just agree or disagree? Okay, so the first one, remember your students thinking, language ability can't be trained. You either have it or you don't. So would your students agree or disagree with that? Just write in the chat. Okay, so we've got quite a few disagrees, a few agreements here, some saying true, mainly disagree, which is great because hopefully they don't believe this. Okay, the second one, I can practice my language skills, but I don't know how I can actually improve them. So again, would they agree or disagree with this? Okay, again, a bit of a mix, but maybe a little bit more agreement here, which I can understand. I can understand how students may feel they're in this position. They can practice, but how do they really improve their listening, their reading, their speaking, their writing? Okay, the next one. If I don't understand a particular word, there's no point in listening. If I don't understand every word, rather, if I don't understand every word, there's no point in listening. So I need to understand everything to be a successful listener. Do they agree or disagree? Okay, again, I think mainly disagree, but some agreeing here. And this is quite a common thing sometimes with students, where they don't understand a particular word when they're listening. They may tend to give up and just think they don't understand anything. And of course, this is not correct. So we need to alter that belief if it exists. Okay, the next one. When I'm reading, I read everything slowly and carefully. Reading quickly means reading badly. Again, agree or disagree with that from your students' perspective? Okay, a bit of a mix again. Yeah, some agreeing, some disagreeing. And again, we know as teachers that this is not true. If you don't need to read everything slowly and carefully. Sometimes reading quickly is an essential skill. Okay, the number 5. turning now to writing. So when writing, planning just wastes time. It's better just to start writing, and then I get it finished more quickly. Do your students agree or disagree with that? So maybe on this one, there's more agreement from your students' perspective. Maybe they think that they just need to start writing and then they'll finish. Again, we know that this is not actually true. And then the last one, to write a good text, I just need to avoid mistakes. That's all. That's all that's involved in writing a good text, just avoiding mistakes. Do your students agree or disagree with that, do you think? Okay, again, a bit of a mix. Okay, yeah, fairly equal mix there again. And what all these statements have in common, although they can be quite common learner beliefs about skills, they are all really, we know as teachers, mistaken beliefs. And we ideally wouldn't want our students to be thinking any of these things. And it's important to help explode the myths, to sort of correct these misbeliefs. So, for example, that one there, language ability can't be trained. You either have it or you don't. We know as teachers that ability is not fixed and all students can improve. They may be starting from different places, but everyone can improve whatever they're doing, including with language skills. It's really crucial that students believe that this is the case, because then they will be able to improve. And picking out another one here, I can practice my language skills, but I don't know how I can actually improve them. This is a really common situation with learners where they can practice all they want, and that will help them to some degree, but they may not know the little techniques and strategies that will help them to actually get better and to become better listeners, become better readers, etc. And basically in this session, we'll be exploring how these micro skills strategies can really take your teenage learners towards their skills competency goals. And the reason I've called this session The Beauty of Small Steps is because it's these micro skills strategies that are often neglected, that are those small steps that take you little by little towards your goal. And you may have a destination there in that photograph beyond the horizon, beyond the hills. You have that sunny destination in the distance that all your students are trying to get to. You'll notice in this photo that there are different paths leading towards that ultimate destination. And the thing is that they need to walk along these different paths to that destination step by step, hence the beauty of small steps. And you may get some kind of pushback from your students if you kind of make the point to them that it's a case of step by step achieving their goals. They may say something like this: well, small steps, but I need to take big steps because I want to make quick progress, and I'm not going to make significant progress if the steps are small, so why should I bother? And really the answer is partly in this image here, where you've got this very small kid and they need to get up to the top there. How are they going to do it? They're not going to do it in one big leap. They're going to do it step by step. And this is also illustrated by this. I'm not going to try and pronounce it in Chinese, obviously, but a common saying from a Chinese proverb that you have there on the screen from Lao Tzu. And basically that idea that I'm sure you've heard before, that a journey of 1,000 miles or whatever great distance we're talking about begins with that first one step. And the true meaning of this expression, this phrase, is also not that it's only the first step that's important. The meaning of it really is that every step is the first step in the rest of your journey. And this really emphasizes that point about it's small steps, one after the other, that will accumulate over time to us in whatever we're doing, to your students in their language skills, reaching the destination that they've set for themselves or that you have set for them. So the beauty of small steps, just to talk a little bit more about this, I think it's important that also in terms of mindsets, if, as it says here, if our students only focus on the end result, where they ultimately want to get to, it's important they know that. But if they only focus on that, then they may feel that they're getting nowhere or nowhere fast. They may notice little progress, and that might cause them to give up. And this is why it's very helpful to break down that journey into those small goals to reach that destination. A little bit more about why small steps are so beautiful and so important. And this is whatever you're doing, it's also relevant to developing language skills. These small steps create that sense of momentum. And as it says there, every small step is important, is significant, it contributes to progress, and it makes the next step seem more achievable because you've achieved the last small step successfully. You gain confidence and you feel that you'll be able to take the next step. And as it says there, achievable actions, in other words, small manageable steps, build that confidence. Every small step feels like a small victory, a small but significant victory. It instills, it creates that sense of achievement and progress that builds and fuels confidence and makes your students eager to continue the journey. It's important that these small steps are taken very regularly. So consistency here and persistence is important. So continuing to take small steps over time will get you to your destination, but you have to keep going. So these regular successes, even if they're small, over time will accumulate into great strides forward, into great leaps. So going back to that photo of the child at the bottom of the steps, step by step, they'll get to the top, and it will be one big stride in the end when they get to their destination. And then an important point that I'll come back to at the end, just briefly, of the session, the idea of differentiation and differentiated teaching and learning. We know that not all journeys are the same. That photo that I showed you earlier with the sunny destination beyond the hills, there were slightly different paths that your students may take to get to that destination. And it's true that we may all wander or travel or progress along slightly different paths, but still reach the same destination in the end. And when you think about it, it's if you try to take really big steps along your path, it's going to be harder to adjust your path according to your personal needs, whereas small steps allow us to adjust to a more personalized path more easily. And I'll come back to that at the end, as I said, but just thinking about small steps as a means of facilitating differentiated learning is an important point. Okay, so you might say, well, that's all kind of nice, it's metaphorical and helps to get across the idea of why small steps are important, but what's that got to do with language skills? So let's focus in a little bit on listening. And we know that listening is widely recognized as it's an essential skill, but it can be very challenging for students. And why is that? Why is it challenging? Why do students find it difficult? Sometimes it can be because in the language classroom, it's often product oriented. And what do I mean by that? It means that what we can sometimes end up doing is just repeatedly testing students' comprehension in different scenarios and situations, monologues, dialogues, presentations, whatever. But we're really just practicing the skill by testing comprehension repeatedly. And that's useful to some degree, but we also need to really try to teach our students how to listen effectively. And that's where these small steps, these micro skill strategies are so important, because if we don't do this, then we can leave our learners feeling frustrated and demotivated, as it says there, because they lack those necessary strategies or skills to really feel that they are actually improving and becoming not just a more practiced listener or reader or whatever, but actually a better one, and that they know how to read or listen or speak or write more effectively. So that's the importance of these micro skills that add up to a process-based approach. So as it says there, successful listening relies on mastering a range of micro skills such as phoneme recognition, identifying where one word begins and the next starts, one word ends and the next begins, lexical retrieval, in other words, remembering the vocabulary that you already know, recognizing chunks of language, etc. And these kinds of micro skills will help our learners to process spoken language more efficiently and more accurately. And by shifting the focus at least sometimes, from testing comprehension to teaching the process of listening, we will help learners to gain confidence, to be more able to navigate spoken language, and to gain competency and confidence and continue their journey. You could say much the same about reading skills. This is basically a copy of one of those previous slides, because it's the same idea that often in the language classroom or for homework or whatever, students end up just testing their comprehension, or we test their comprehension in class when it comes to reading, rather than helping them to learn how to read effectively. And that can be frustrating, demotivating, etc. So again, a process-based approach that includes a particular focus on these micro skills is going to be useful to. So let's have a look at some practical strategies. That was all slightly background about why this is important and what the positive effects can be if we do it well. So let's look at some practical strategies. So in terms of these micro skills, you'll be familiar, I assume, with the idea of top-down skills and bottom-up skills. So top-down, of course, are those skills where your learners are focusing mainly on the overall meaning and context, at least initially, rather than every word or detail. So examples of top-down skills could be, before they read or listen, they activate their schemata, their background knowledge, which could be factual or it could be linguistic, but you encourage them to start thinking about things they already know before they read and listen, because that will help them when they listen. Recognizing the genre is important in helping them to understand whatever they're reading or listening to, predicting from context, etc. So these are examples of top-down skills. Bottom-up skills is kind of the opposite, obviously. So this is where learners focus on the smallest units of language initially, and they build up to an understanding of the bigger picture. So it's the opposite of top-down. And here, examples would be when listening, recognizing individual sounds, recognizing stress and intonation, and how that affects meaning. In reading, it can be things like decoding letters and words and noticing sentence structures, speaking and writing, producing intelligible sounds, producing the right words, and getting the grammar right, etc. So bottom-up skills. Okay, so a question for you. Which is more important? Top-down, which is the big picture understanding first, or bottom-up, where students focus on details first? So just in the chat, which do you think are top-down, or so which do you think are more important, top-down or bottom-up? Okay, yeah, okay. So lots of people are putting both, which is great. So it's a slightly trick question, because I mean, it depends a little bit on the kind of text, perhaps, and on the situation, on the scenario. But overall, and as someone says there, it depends, yeah. Overall, really, our learners need both of these types of strategy, the top-down and the bottom-up, in order to become effective listeners or readers or whatever. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail now. So we're going to look here at reading, a bit more about reading skills. I'm going to show you 4 groups of micro skills, reading micro skills. And in the chat, I'd just like you to write top-down or bottom-up, depending on whether you think they are top-down or bottom-up skills. So the first group, here we have things like identifying upper and lowercase letters quickly and accurately, quickly recognizing high frequency and familiar words, using context, word family, spelling rules, etc., to work out unknown words, etc. Is that bottom-up or top-down? Just pop in the chat. Okay, yeah, we've got bottom up. Yeah, okay. So group 1 is bottom up, exactly. Second group of reading micro skills. So using prior knowledge of the topic, genre, culture, or world to interpret the text, anticipating what the text will be about using titles, headings, images, etc. Yeah, top down, absolutely. The next one, we have things like processing articles, prepositions, auxiliaries, etc., identifying nouns, verbs, adjectives, interpreting subject-verb agreement. What have we got here? Yeah, got bottom up for this one. And the last group, understanding who the text is written for, reading between the lines to understand ideas that are not explicitly stated, recognizing the writer's feelings, opinions, or bias, very important these days in terms of critical thinking for students to be able to think about this type of thing so that they understand where the writer is coming from. So this is, as you've been putting in the chat, correct, top down. Okay, so just some examples of the detail of the kind of thing we're talking about here. Let's turn to listening micro skills now. The same task for you. I'm going to show you 4 groups of micro listening skills in the chat. Just write top down or bottom up for each group. So the first group, we have things like recognizing individual sounds, identifying word boundaries, understanding sentence stress, recognizing intonation patterns. And this, yeah, as most people are saying in the chat, thank you, is these are bottom-up examples of bottom-up skills. Okay, group 2, recognizing the context or the situation. So figuring out where, why, and between who the spoken interaction that you're listening to is happening. Identifying the speaker's purpose or intention. So why are they talking? What are they trying to get you to do? Are they trying to persuade you, inform you? Are they complaining? Are they trying to entertain you? This one, yeah, as you've been saying, is top down. Group 3, activating background knowledge, so those schemata, prior knowledge about the topic, could be vocabulary as well, predicting content from titles, from visuals. And yeah, we have top down again here. And the last group, when listening, so things like decoding features of connected speech, like recognizing where words are linking together or where elision, weak forms, etc. Okay, so yeah, and you've got that. So bottom up, well done. Okay, so those were just some examples of the kind of things that we're talking about when it comes to reading and listening, top down or bottom up. So practical strategies and how we might put these things into practice. Firstly, I would say that we need a balanced syllabus, because it can often be the case that some of these things are omitted for whatever reason from a syllabus, and then they just don't happen and students get the benefit. So when I say a balanced syllabus, I'm talking about having, of course, functional goals of the type that are on the screen here. So things like, a functional goal might be being able to follow a presentation when students go to university or they're at work or whatever. They may have to be able to follow a presentation about whatever topic. Understanding an article, writing a report, writing a formal email, giving a talk themselves about something. So these are all quite big functional goals, practical things they may want to do with language, with the English language. They can also be functional things like functional areas, like asking for clarification, expressing gratitude, etc. So these functional goals are really important and are usually included in syllabuses. What can sometimes drop out of the syllabus or kind of be ignored to some degree are these very important small steps, these beautiful small steps that will get you to your destination in the end, these micro skills and strategies like recognizing individual sounds, activating schemata, understanding and noticing rising or falling intonation, all these kinds of things that collectively add up to being able to listen, read, speak, or write more effectively. So that my first point here would be that you need the right balance in the syllabus in terms of what you cover in the classroom, so that it's not all about the functional goals, and it's actually also helping learners to learn how to become better at reading, listening, or whatever. And it's a bit like, to use another analogy, building a house. So if you think on the right-hand side there, the ultimate goal or the vision that your students hopefully have about what they want from their English could be something like studying at a university with English as a medium of instruction. It could be they want to get a job abroad, work in a multinational company, just make friends from different countries online or whatever. but they hopefully have this goal in mind, or more than one goal, the ultimate goal. That's like the house that we want to build. The functional goals in the middle, the kind of things I mentioned on the previous screen, like following a presentation, writing a report, etc. You could think of this as the kind of walls that they need to be able to build in order to build that house that they ultimately are looking for. But to be able to build the walls that build the house, you need the micro skills, which are, knowing how to chip away at the stones in the right kind of way so that you can then create the wall that creates the house. And each of these steps is important. And I think sometimes what can happen is, as I said, hopefully the ultimate goal your students have in their heads and they know what that goal is from their perspective. Perhaps often the middle bit there, the functional goals, become the main focus, and maybe the micro skills therefore can be neglected. I'm not saying this always happens, but it can be a risk sometimes. And the point is that you need all of these in order to get to that ultimate goal that hopefully your students have. So how might that look in terms of a syllabus and a unit by unit plan? So just looking at an example here where we have some goals from a unit from something that I'll show you later. So by the end of this unit, you can scan a magazine article for specific information, understand a fact file about music, understand an interview, etc. Or this one here, by the end of this unit, you can activate existing vocabulary before reading, understand a story, in this case about the shark attack, understand an article, etc. You can see here, and also in these other examples of possible unit goals, that there is a mix of functional goals, but also, importantly, these micro skills and strategies. And really the ones that are more micro skills, these kinds of small steps that students need, I've highlighted with the orange arrows, and you can see that there are plenty of them and they are important. There are lots of functional goals here as well, the understanding a fact file, understanding an interview, writing an informal email, but being able to scan a text, being able to start and end emails correctly, knowing what phrases to use, being able to predict what might happen next in the text. These are all examples of those micro skills. So important that they are included in the syllabus and in lessons. How might these actually be integrated into the flow of a lesson? Let's look at some practical examples of how that might happen, starting with reading. So this example here, this lesson, you can see that we've got a nice text. It's about London. It's top 5 places in London for tourists, things like Madame Tussauds, Covent Garden, that kind of thing. Some of you probably have seen these things yourselves if you've been to London. And you can see in terms of the activities that we begin with look at the photos and the headings in the text, which are the places have you heard of, what do you know about them, what can you guess about them from the photos. So already here we're starting to help students develop micro skills. In this case, it's predicting from headings and visuals what may be in the text. But then we also focus very concretely on a particular micro skill. And you can see in the purple box there, reading tip, skimming. Students may or may not have a vague or more precise idea of what skimming actually means. And it's important they understand what the micro skill actually is so that they can then practice it and then hopefully absorb it into what they're able to do in future as well. So we describe it very concretely here. So skimming is when you read a text quickly to get a general understanding of the main ideas. You don't need to read every word carefully, etc. So spelling it out very concretely for students, what this micro skill is. But then, of course, we need to give them the opportunity to practice it. So you can see in exercise 2, after they read the reading tip, it says, then skim the text quickly, the places in London text, which places would be good for a person who is interested in scientific experiments, likes relaxing or going for a walk, etc. So obviously, in order to do this activity, exercise 2, they don't need to read every word. They can skim and just identify key bits of the text that give them the answer to these questions. Now, if we hadn't introduced them to the reading tip before they did the task, and if we hadn't really spelt out to them what skimming means and what it entails, there's a risk that they just default to their maybe usual way of reading, which could be just read the text from the first word to the last word in detail and try and understand everything. And as soon as they find something they're not sure about, they get stuck and it gets frustrating. Whereas actually all they need to do is skim it and find the answers to these particular questions. So it's all about helping learners to learn how to read more effectively by equipping them with these micro skills. We can then go further by having, as that orange arrow there points out, a skills bank. And here in the back, and I'll show you where this comes from later, as I said, we have more detail about things like skimming or indeed scanning, reading the gist, etc., where it spells out in more detail, more concretely even than we can on the page in the lesson, what it means to skim a text and some tips and ideas about how to do that effectively. Okay, another example still in the area of reading. This one, again, is in the purple box there where you can see the reading tip, pronoun reference. If I just zoom in, zoom into that. So the text is about an accident in the mountains. So it's some kind of story where some kind of accident happens to these people in the mountains. And in terms of the how this works, how this works in terms of the series of activities. Initially, they work in pairs. They look at the title. This is an exercise 1. Look at the title and the pictures before they read. They discuss the questions. So what type of accident could happen in the mountains? What do you think might happen at the end of the story? Think of 10 words that could be in the story. So again, here we're practicing again that idea of predicting from visuals and from titles. They then do some comprehension activities. So they read the story where your prediction is correct. Exercise 3, then they read the text again, complete the tasks. So you have a number of comprehension tasks. This is comprehension at this stage here. But then we get to the reading tip, pronoun reference. And I'll go now to that bit where we have the detail on this. So again, we spell out very clearly what pronoun reference means and why it's important. And then there's an immediate practice opportunity for students to be able to practice this maybe new for them, maybe not, little micro skill that will help them to become better readers. So look at the pronouns in bold in the text. What do they refer to? So we've got half an hour later, in that bit of text in the middle, we knew it was the wrong decision when it suddenly started raining heavily. We put on our raincoats, but they didn't help much. So they refers obviously to raincoats. Get your students working out what the pronouns refer to. It will help them to become better readers. And again, we can have a skills bank here. There's a question in the chat, someone mentioning what book is it? I'll mention this later. I'll just go through more of these examples first. But again, we have a skills bank where students can go to the back and, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Right, okay, so here in the skills bank, in the back of the book, pronoun reference, and we have more detail about pronoun reference and what it is and how to do it effectively. Okay, moving on to another example here. And this one is topic sentences. Again, a very useful thing for students to be aware of when they're reading, but also, of course, when they're writing. This is a good example of where micro skills that they learn about when reading and that they can notice in the text that they read may help them to become better writers as well, because they then adopt those techniques and practices in their own writing. But the idea of topic sentences here, again, spelled out very clearly what this means. So the first sentence of a paragraph is sometimes called a topic sentence. A topic sentence usually gives you a good idea about the content of the paragraph. When you read a text, try reading the first sentence of each paragraph first. This will help you understand about what's in the text before you read every word. So it's a useful technique for your students to stop them falling into that trap of starting with first word and reading in detail all the way through until the very end and getting stuck in multiple places. This is a nice technique for them, whether it's in their classroom reading, whether it's in exams or tests that they may take at various points. Read the first sentence of each paragraph as a first step to give you a good idea of what the text is about overall. And in exercise 2 here, 2A, after they've seen the reading tip about topic sentences, as usual, we want to give them an immediate opportunity to practice this idea. And in this case, we have gapped the topic sentence from each paragraph in the text, and the students have to identify which is the paragraph for each of these topic sentences in exercise 2A. So it's helping them to identify the topic sentence and how it fits into the okay, and again, there would be a section in the skills bank at the back of the book to help them with more detail. And then this is just a screen to show you the range of things that we may have. So I haven't shown you all of these examples in the context of the actual lessons, but you can see that there's a wide range of these kinds of micro skills here. So things like identifying the opinion of a writer, predicting, skimming, as I mentioned, dealing with unknown words, identifying the purpose of a text, reading for gist, scanning, etc. So lots of different reading micro skills there. What about listening? So we'll look at a couple examples here. So in a typical lesson, this one is about music. You may, of course, begin with a bit of vocabulary input here. So the different musical styles. Then with that vocabulary sort of in their armory and helping prepare them for the listening, we then go into the listening section. So this is, in this case, this is comprehension work. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do comprehension work as well. It is really important. That's the practice of the listening skill. And we start this particular section, this listening section, with comprehension work, and it's understanding opinions about music. So they listen to other kids talking about different styles that they like and what they think about them. So that is comprehension work. But then we have a listening tip where this is all about identifying language chunks. And again, when it comes to listening, in the same way that with the reading, we make the tip very concrete here. So we describe it to the students. Chunks are groups of words that are often heard together, for example, in common phrases. When you listen, try to notice chunks of language that are already familiar to you. If you can identify them, it means you don't have to process every single word separately, etc. So identifying those chunks of language, which are, if learners can identify these chunks, they're a bit like stepping stones. You know, when you're walking across a fast river, it can be quite scary. But if you have stepping stones along the way that take you across the river, you know that if you step on these stepping stones, you'll get across safely. And sometimes spoken discourse is like a fast river for students, and it can be scary and intimidating. And these language chunks, if they're familiar to them and if they can recognize them and put their feet on them, they will help them to navigate these fast currents of discourse effectively. So this is again a useful skill for them to acquire. And again, we give them immediate practice in this micro skill. So you've got identifying chunks of language. We've got the topic of the lesson, which is music. They've had some comprehension work in the previous activity. So now the activity here is read the listening tip. Then they listen again to what they've already done the comprehension work on. Listen again, tick the phrases or chunks of language that you hear. So the ones that they identify when they listen again, they tick. So it's things like, I'm not so keen on, I really hate, how about you, it's so wonderful. These are these nice chunks of language, fixed phrases that will also help them become better speakers, because if they have these chunks of language, they can also use them, but is an important listening skill as well. So how that then fits into the context of a lesson, you can see you've got the listening tip up there at the top, the listening tip, listening activity, exercise 3. But then in the same way that in the real world, so to speak, outside of the classroom, listening and speaking are integrated. That's the way things normally work. Therefore, we do the same here. We move into a speaking section, and I'll just zoom into it so you can read it. So now we get students to actually talk about music. So they've had the opportunity to listen to other kids talking about it. They've got the chunks of language. So now they write the phrases in exercise 3, those chunks of language in the correct place in the table. So are they for giving positive opinions, negative opinions, or asking someone's opinion? And then they basically have a chance to use this language themselves. So integrating the listening and the speaking, but with that listening tip very much concretely embedded in the lesson. Another example here in the area of listening. So again, you've got it highlighted in that greeny blue color in the middle there, listening tip, being an active listener. And this is a nice example, I think, because it helps to reinforce to your students that listening isn't usually a solitary activity. It's not something that's all about you and, you know, trying to understand every word that you're listening to. It's often about being in a conversation. And as it says there, in a conversation, it's good to be an active listener to show the other person that you're really listening to them. In other words, don't just listen, you should also respond to what the other person is saying things like, really, gosh, wow, that's right, oh yes, and really encouraging other the other person in the interaction, and helping to motivate them to continue speaking by how you react as a listener. So being an active listener is an important skill. So we've included that as well. There you see it slightly bigger, so you can read it all. Another example, again, just taking a broad view of listening skills. So this one, again, highlighted in the greeny blue box, identifying keywords in questions. And this is a useful, I'll just zoom in so you can see it there. Before you do a listening exercise or test, read the questions carefully and underline the most important words. This will help you to focus on the necessary information when you listen. So this is in effect, a listening skill, micro skill. Read the listening comprehension questions beforehand and underline and identify the key words so that when you listen, you can listen out for those keywords that will help you to get the right answers. Important for students in exams, in an exam context, to know that this is a useful tip to help them to get the right answers when they actually then listen. And just we'll do one more on listening here. So again, highlighted there in sort of teal color, greeny blue. I'll just zoom in. So this one is identifying a speaker's intentions. When you listen, it's important to think about why the speaker says what they say. What do they want you to think or feel or do after you've listened to them? Is everything they say really true, etc.? And as I mentioned earlier, it's really important. This has always been important, but it seems particularly important these days when there's so much opportunity for misinformation to be spread around, and that your students will come across in spoken or written form, to really identify the speakers or indeed the writer's intentions and think about what they're actually trying to make you think or feel or do. And that is, you know, a listening skill. It's not all about understanding individual words. And then here again, this screen is just to show you the range of, you know, there's not a complete list, obviously, there are lots more, but just to give you a sense of the range of these micro skills when it comes to listening. So we looked at language chunks, and be listening for specific information, identifying keywords in questions, being an active listener, etc., etc. So the important thing here is that we need to make these micro skills concrete for students, so they're not just some sort of vague thing about listening for detail or listening for general understanding, but they're actually very concrete, specific micro skills that, when they accumulate them all together, these small steps will help them to become better listeners, better readers, etc. Okay, moving on. And again, Skills Bank for listening, same way as for reading, we can have a skills bank where there's more detail, more tips about various things, things that might be useful for them to remember and how to improve, etc. Likewise, speaking, I'm not really going to talk in more detail about speaking, but also a similar approach with speaking and a skills bank where things are flagged for students that will be helpful. And then just a little bit on writing. So similar kind of thing, really. Some are probably more commonly done than others. Things like using paragraphs, topic sentences, etc. Starting and ending letters in the right way, formal email rules, etc. So these are the kind of the micro skills for writing, not a complete list. Again, here, obviously, just a sample of the kind of thing that I'm talking about. But if we're talking about helping students to become better writers, we need to think about that process writing approach. And what does a good process writing approach look like? So we'll just have a look at an example of what that flow could be. So this is a kind of ideal, I would say, scenario where you would have a model task. So this is not what the students will then do themselves, but it's quite similar. So you have a model task, and then you have a model text. It's very useful, obviously, for students to see the kind of thing, maybe a bit longer than what they're going to produce themselves, but see the kind of thing that they are going to be expected to do. In this case, we're looking at a for and against essay, so a common exam type of text. So model task, model text, but then we need to help them to kind of take apart the model text and see how it's working. So you could have a micro skills tip, also with writing, in the same way that with reading, topic sentences are important. That's the same in students' own writing. So again, we spell out very clearly here the writing tip, why it's important, explain it in a little bit of detail so they understand what it is, then give them an opportunity to practice by actually looking at the model text and identifying the which paragraph does each of these things here. Then we move on and we analyze a bit more the text structure of the model text. So read the model essay again, complete plan with these words. So you have a little white box for each paragraph. And this is to help students to think about the purpose of each of these paragraphs in a for and against essay. So paragraph 1, the gap in gap 1 would be introduce the topic and talk generally about it. So the task for the students is to complete the gaps in the white boxes using the words above. And this is, as I said, to get them thinking about the structure of a for and against essay in this particular case. Then we need to give them useful language that they may then use in their own for and against essay. So we have useful phrases, match the phrases from the model essay, which are numbers 1 to 6, with phrases with a similar meaning, A to F. So we're giving them those useful phrases. Then after we've given them the model, analyze the model, given them useful phrases, they need a task, which needs to be quite similar, but not exactly the same. So it's a for and against essay. This is the task for students. They need to plan. So going back to that quote right at the beginning, where sometimes students might think planning is a waste of time and they just need to start writing. That's not the right idea. They need to plan, so we need to give them help in planning. So exercise 5 here, they need to think, what could you write in your essay, make notes about these questions, compare your ideas with a partner, so it's a little bit collaborative. Then they organize their notes and look at the phrases in that list that they would like to include. So that's the planning. Then they write. And then importantly, they also have to check their writing. So exercise 9, check your writing. Have you written 4 paragraphs, talked about the topic generally in paragraph 1, etc. So guiding them through the checking stage as well. So going back to the idea of exploding the myths or the sort of misbeliefs that students may sometimes have, this process writing approach is quite, it's thorough, basically. It goes from a model and analysis of the model, giving them micro skills, through to planning and writing and checking themselves. And it really disproves those ideas that planning wastes time when writing, or to write a good text, I just need to avoid mistakes. That's all. It's a lot more. There's a lot more to it than that, and we need to help our students to realize that. This is how this then all fits together into one writing lesson, a double-page writing lesson with all the bits that I was just showing you. There's also a writing bank with additional tips and ideas. And just to answer the question about what book or what series all this kind of stuff comes from. So this is very new. You'll hear more about it soon. It's called 4 Skills, and it's 3 levels, 1, 2, and 3, from sort of A1 plus A2 up to about B1. And it's listening and speaking as one set of books, and reading and writing as another. So the kind of things with the micro strategies and skills I've been showing you from this series. Just very briefly, the last 2 minutes before I let you go for another short break before session 3. Going back to that point about not all journeys are the same, and that we can each travel along different paths and still reach that sunlit destination at the end. Small steps, as I've said, help us to personalize our path more easily, because we're taking small steps along that journey. But also, how do we differentiate effectively for our learners? And this is something that can be challenging unless it's done in a very practical way. And here I'm just going to mention very briefly a course that you may already be familiar with. It's been out for a year or 2 now. Options, it's a general English course for lower secondary. We say it's your best choice for mixed abilities. Why do we say that? Because it takes a very practical approach to differentiation. So that it doesn't make your life as a teacher a nightmare. It actually helps you to differentiate a little bit for your students in the classroom. Very briefly, in terms of reading, all the main reading texts, we offer 3 different versions of the text. So you can see here we have the standard version, the simplified version, which is a lot more visual, and an enriched version, which is a bit longer and a bit more challenging. The standard one, in this particular case, it's about the footballer Mo Salah, and CFR level is A2 plus. The simplified version, students also get this version, is shorter, much more visually supported, and therefore it's something that they will find less challenging. And the enriched one is more like B1 rather than A2 plus. It's a bit longer, longer sentences, more challenging vocabulary, etc. These are all made available to all the students. So you get standard, simplified, and enriched texts, different genres, and different levels of challenge, but they're all related to the same comprehension in this case. So whichever of the versions the students read, they will be able to do the same activity. So that means you keep them together as one class. The reading itself is different, that different students may be doing, but they're all doing the same activity. And then just 1 more minute to finish. So differentiating listening, we have a nice audio player in options where you in the classroom or students at home with the ebook can slow the audio down to 90%, 80%, 70% of the full speed, and then speed it up again to 100% when they feel comfortable. So this helps to differentiate the listening process. Speaking, we offer regularly, we have 2 different but similar, quite similar, but different speaking activities. So we have option A or option B for a speaking task. Option A is always a bit easier or a bit less challenging or a bit more supported. There's a bit less for students to have to think of for themselves. Whereas option B is the opposite. It's a bit more challenging. They have to think a bit more. They have to maybe do extra stages, integrate more skills, that kind of thing. So differentiated speaking through task option A or B. And similar with writing, option A, option B, for writing tasks, with option A being simpler, less challenging, etc. Option B being requiring more of the students. And they can do one or both. They could start with A and then do B. They could start with B. If they find it too difficult, they go back and do A. So we're giving you options. That's why we called the course Options. Thank you very much for participating. I think I've overrun by about 3 minutes, but hopefully that hasn't disturbed your break too much. Yeah, thank you for listening, for participating. I hope you found that useful, and enjoy the rest of the morning and the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. I don't know if you were able to see the chat going through, but a lot of enthusiasm for the presentation, and particularly that really practical aspect of how we can do it, and also kind of quite a lot of life tips for us to take away as teachers as well. Remembering that things, yeah, need to be addressed in small steps, not trying to bite off too much of the apple. So thank you very much, Chris, and to everybody. Again, if we haven't had a chance to answer your question directly, we will get the panelists to respond to that later. So we're going to take a 5 minute break now after we've thanked Chris, and we will come back at 10 past 12 to finish off with Lindsay Clanfield. Chris, thank you once again.